Welcome back to Zero Sum Gaming here at the Culture Cache. I've got a cool game on tap for you this week, and it comes from one of our Patreon supporters named Zakor. If you're not familiar with it yet, check it out after this video, of course. Patreon, it lets you donate to creators like us through YouTube or really any other creative venture, but we do things a little bit differently here. What we like to do is put you in the director's chair. You don't just get to suggest topics for our videos, you actually get to choose them, like Zakor did for this one. So this game, Seiken Densetsu 3, it's a good one. Let's check it out.
The title alone can be a bit confusing. The actual title of this game is Seiken Densetsu 3. We got the first two games in the series here in America, the latter of which was the popular title Secret of Mana. This game is a direct prequel to Secret of Mana, set 1,000 years before it. Here's where some of the confusion sets in. How do we refer to this game? Do we Westerners refer to it by its Japanese name, Seiken Densetsu 3? And most people won't know what you're talking about. Should we instead use the English series name, Secret of Mana? And even then, what number do we use? It's the third game in the series, so is it Secret of Mana 3? Then where did number 2 go? Or if we call it Secret of Mana 2, then what does that say about the first Seiken Densetsu, which was released in America as Final Fantasy Adventure on Game Boy, and later re-released on Game Boy Advance as Sword of Mana? Personally, I tend to call this game by its Japanese title, Seiken Densetsu 3, or I simply call it Mana 3. This is the game that inspired me to start learning the Japanese language. I'm by no means an expert, but I owe everything I do know to this game. It started not only my appreciation for the Japanese language, but also my love of import games in general. I actively import games for the Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Boy, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, and GameCube these days. While I always welcome people to learn new languages, and thus more ways to think, the language barrier isn't much of an issue in this game. Almost the entire game is represented visually. For example, you may not be able to read explode using the written language up there, but you can still certainly figure out what this spell does by using the picture alone. This works for everything in this game except your storage menu. You can access storage by pressing the start button when not in battle. You can only populate your ring menu with 10 different items, although you can carry up to 9 of each one of these items. Your storage has space for an unlimited number of different items and 99 of each item. But, problem is there are no pictures here, so at the very least, you'll have to match up a few of the Japanese characters if you want to retrieve your desired items. The graphics are appealing and colorful. The cute drawn look of player characters and enemies juxtaposes well with the serious and sinister nature of the evil in this story. All 6 of the characters have significant tragedies that directly cause them to leave their homes and embark on their global journeys. Named characters do die, and others are regularly put in genuine peril. As if to drive this point home, there's a villain called the Death-Eating Man, and he's exactly what you think he is. The visuals really help tell the story. Every so often when you play, go take a look at the Mana Sanctuary. As the events of the game unfold and the goddess of Mana continues to weaken, you can watch as the lush greenery of the Mana Sanctuary slowly gives way to dull and lifeless browns. I love details like this in my games. The soundtrack to this game is great, but it is very Japanese and it may not be quite what you're used to if you've played other games in the series. It's incredibly rich in its sound, but it's not quite as soft or melodic as Secret of Mana's soundtrack. Still, the music does do its part to set the mood of each area or scene, and this is a soundtrack I am glad to have in my collection. The battle system is a lot of fun and really sets this game apart. You attack by pressing the A button. To keep you from simply spamming attacks all day, each character has some recovery time after they swing, so you have to be good at offense and defense. This slows the pace of the game down just a tiny bit, but it adds an important layer of complexity to it. You must time your attacks carefully, as you won't be able to attack again for about a half a second. And Kevin and Hawkeye, they attack twice each time you press the button. In fact, that's probably one reason they tend to be the favorite characters from fans of this game. Each time you do land a hit, it fills 1 bar on your tech gauge. Press B and you can use one of your techniques if the gauge has a minimum of 4 bars in it. Your gauge has a maximum of 3 different levels. The green level is a stronger and flashier, but otherwise normal attack. Your yellow and red levels are much more spectacular. They can't be blocked or dodged, and they let you pull off some really fun and interesting moves. You also have magic at your disposal. During battle, press X to open up the ring menu. You have 1 ring for your items and 1 ring for your spells. Choose the spell you want, and you're off to the races. Well, not quite. Each spell has an incantation time which decreases based on your intelligence stat. Intelligence is extremely important to magic as it increases damage, reduces incantation time, and it reduces magic damage you take from enemies. Also, each spell has a minimum intelligence rating you have to learn it in the first place. And, well, Hawkeye, he learns some of his through agility, but they are still sped up based on his intelligence stat. There's a fun little way to cheat death in this game. While a character is chanting out the incantation to cast a spell, they cannot die. I promise, I will never die. You can use this to your advantage by healing them during the animation. With a little speed and a little luck, you can even make a character who just received mortal damage start casting a spell, then throw them some candy to keep them in the game. It's not perfect, but hey, it never hurts to try. The variety in this game is nearly endless. Unless you deliberately set out to make it so, it's never the same game twice. You choose 3 characters from a pool of 6 for a total of 120 different possible ways to assemble your party. Of course, that doesn't include class changes. This means there are 64 different possible combinations of classes per party, with a grand total of 7,680 total different playable party arrangements. It's funny because when you look online, it's really easy to find people who argue about which parties are the best ones, but there's really no way to know. Certainly nobody's tried them all. This variety affects not only the gameplay, but the story as well. This is called the Triangle Story System. The 6 playable characters hail from 6 different kingdoms, 3 of which are out to dominate the world. The character you choose becomes the main character of the story, although you can play as your other 2 at will by pressing the select button. The opening of the game focuses on that first character you pick, so you'll get one of 6 different scenarios, and as the game unfolds, you will play through one of 3 sets of late game dungeons as well. Your character choice determines which of the 3 evil kingdoms ends up besting the others to become the game's true villain. The Mana Sword has power of creation and destruction. You can tell why a villain wants this so badly. If you've played Secret of Mana, you're probably wondering if this game supports local co-op. The answer is yes! This game is a ton of fun to play alone, but bring along a friend and you'll both have an absolute blast. Personally, I think Hawkeye and Kevin are the most fun characters to play in 2-player since they're so aggressive. Duran and Reese, they work pretty well too. Angela and Charlotte, they may have a spot on your team in multiplayer, but they slow the game down so much. If you're playing by yourself, it's not really a problem, but if there's another person there, you don't want them to get bored while you're playing in your spell ring all day or anything like that. So if you bring them along, it's best to let the CPU handle them. Better yet, it's a drop-in, drop-out system. So if you have a friend who just wants to try the game out or maybe play for only one dungeon, they can. Or if you're playing the whole game 2-player and somebody has to take a phone call or something, the other player doesn't have to just sit and wait while that person's on the phone. They can just drop out, do what they have to do, come back when they're ready. The game is not without its flaws, though. It is incredibly easy to accidentally overwrite the wrong save file. The game doesn't warn you about your overwrite, so when you press A, it saves. Period. And the other problem is that it defaults the cursor to the last slot to which you saved. So when you start a new game, be extra careful that you don't save over your last game. I cannot tell you how many times I have erased in-game files that I wanted to keep because of this. Another problem is that the control can be a little unresponsive at times. You'll swear you're hitting the button, and you probably are, but the game simply ignores it. The opposite can also sometimes be true. Let's say you're walking to the right and suddenly you stop. Sometimes the game will continue to move you to the right. It's not game-breaking, but it is noticeable. There are also some pacing issues in the game. It's a pretty short game, 20 hours, 30 if you really want to do everything that trip through the game has to offer. But by the time you get to your second class change, it slows down immensely. The game gets pretty grindy. You see, in order to pull off your final class change, you have to get a question mark seed, which is a random drop from only certain enemies. If that wasn't luck-based enough for you, when you plant said seed, it gives you a randomly selected item for one of your character's class changes. Let's say you're playing as Duran and you want to become a paladin. The game may repeatedly give you items for, say, Angela or one of your other characters. Or worse, you want to be a paladin, right? Then the game could taunt you by giving you the item that lets Duran become a lord instead. This part of the game can really bottleneck the action. It's a minor frustration, but it's a noticeable one. And in that same vein, every piece of final equipment comes from a different seed, which is another random drop, and each seed generates a random piece of final equipment. So maxing out your characters really does become an exercise in patience. Still, it's not like you must have every character's best equipment to beat the game or anything. Finally, some people can be put off by the start-stop nature of the game. It is an action-oriented game, but whenever any player or enemy performs a spell or a high-level technique, the action freezes in order to animate it. I don't mind this so much, but I can see how it could be too much for some players, especially since you can't skip them. Holy Ball and Saint Beam and spells like that might be a lot of fun to watch, but after you've seen them 27 times during a boss battle, they do tend to lose their visual impressiveness. Oh, one more thing. This is incredibly minor, but the low HP warning that you get, yeah, it will get on your nerves. You're going to hear a lot of it while you play.
Alright, so you've read the article on theculturecache.com, and you just watched this video. So bottom line, is this game worth it? The answer? Unequivocally, yes, of course it is! Right now, at least at the time I'm making this video, there are not one but two different listings on eBay where you can get this game for $10. I'm going to tell you straight up. I imported this game in the 90s, and when I did, I paid $70 for it, and I'm still happy with my purchase today. I would go maybe as high as $110 to say how good this game is. $10 is an absolute steal. So as soon as this video is finished, you really need to go pick this game up. Don't let this one pass you by. Thanks for watching.
Duran, no! Flammy is your friend, and that's animal cruelty! Why?